Speaking of loss is not an easy thing to do. Why remind ourselves of our pain and our suffering? Indeed, why make a record of it? Why share the experience of losing someone so close, a bastion of her life? Tanja is an intensely social person. She is aware of the senses and sensations and tingles of living. Pushing oneself towards fulfillment and pleasure requires such a deep understanding of will and passion and need. To open oneself up to such wonders as love, lust, and wish leaves one open, at the same time, to a deep sense of loss, loneliness, and isolation. Not everyone can understand those pleasures, especially when they allow a forced moral to guide that morality. Sometimes being brave means to stand alone. Sometimes being different means to lose friendship. Sometimes being open means to face those who are closed and unaware of their imperviousness. It means to feel pain openly, wholly, and on occasion terribly. From that sense of hitting one's depths rises the will of the soul, the character and the demand. I will live. Those around me will live. We will remember those who have passed by leading a fuller existence, to compensate, to balance, to respect the loss of one so deeply missed. Tanja speaks of how she is dealing with her father's passing. She laments how she was not ready to face it, how so few of us truly are. Yet why? When death is the only thing guaranteed in life, do we not speak of its coming? How do we not come to terms with the one event every life is bound to experience? Not every question has an answer. But this is not the last time we will speak of these issues. In the meantime, I will leave you with the immensity of Tanja's courage. I am in many ways happy to say that I'm joined again by the wonderful Tanja. And though that is the case, Tanja, today's topic is going to be somewhat more sobering and of a very unique nature, owing to recent events. And for those, I will initially communicate my sympathies and condolences. However, the main essence and focus of today's talk is how you have managed to deal with the situation in which you find yourself, and also the feelings that have washed through you. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to learning a lot from that experience. So thank you for your courage in coming on and talking with me. It's always lovely to have you.
Thanks very much for your nice introduction, Zach, even today. I am very, very thankful and grateful that we can do this podcast today, which actually, I think this time was really me urging you that we can talk about that, because I think it will help me in my recovery. Even though I believe if you lose a parent, the recovery process is a lifelong thing. So yeah, for our audience, I lost my father 3 weeks ago. He died very unexpectedly. So it's two things my mom, my brother, and I, and the rest of the family from both sides and friends had to deal with is that he's gone, and that it had been so unexpected. So no chance to say goodbye, actually. And that is the like the reality I live in since 3 weeks. And the last 3 weeks were so intense, but also so there were not only negative and devastating moments, but also, let's put it that way, joyful maybe, but happy moments. Yeah, and I had the feeling, I really had the feelings the last days when I came back from Italy, where we had the funeral, that I wanted to share it with people, because we do, when we are feeling good, it's easy to live life or to do a podcast if we are like on the top of the wave. You know what I mean? I don't even know if you say that in English like that, but
yeah, we do.
Yeah, you are all, like, I love talking about dancing, sensual talk, and this and that, and interesting things. But this is, and it's amazing because it's part of life. And there are also other parts of life, and death is a part of life, and losing people we love or we care for is also part of life. But we don't see this, or we are not carrying this around with us all the time, which is also good on one hand, so you don't get depressed. But as for myself, and I'm here sharing today really solidly my points of view, and people might have other opportunities, and that's absolutely fine. Did I say opportunities? I meant opinions. You also have to bear with me, because in the last 3 weeks, I have some concentration, like really concentration issues. It's sometimes for me hard to focus, which I observe, which is getting better, but I think it's also due to the, I don't know how you would call it, the trauma that my father is gone now, and everything which came up afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can also consider it the sudden loss, the surprise at finding yourself in a situation that, as you suggested, you completely had not expected, and neither had any of your close family. So, I haven't lost a parent. I am very thankful to say. So I can't completely share every sentiment that you have felt, but I have lost loved ones, grandparents, and as you say, everybody has a way of dealing with these things. What? Okay, so you mentioned the two main hurdles, emotional hurdles that your family and you have been dealing with. But for you personally, what is so there was joy as well as this deep pain that you have felt at the loss, because obviously you, I imagine, came together and you spoke about the warm memories, because so much of what we remember about the people that we have loved is the beauty of the memories that remain. But of the entire last few weeks that you've had to deal with, what overriding emotions can you explain?
I would actually turn to both sides. Like, maybe let me talk first of all about the thing, like, as you said, like you said you didn't lose a parent, and what I've been thinking about lately is like, nobody is preparing you for that. You know, I lost grandparents, I lost dear friends, I lost aunties and uncles. So I lost people I loved and I really cared about. But that is, to me personally, the loss of my father now, the death of my father now, is a whole different issue. I believe it's the same for like father or mother. Like, yeah, I was really asking myself, like, nobody is, excuse my French, nobody is fucking preparing you for the loss of a parent, which for me just is like a whole different story. And maybe you could also include the loss of a sibling, like, you know, like the core family, or a child, or a partner, you know. I don't know. I think people are different here. Maybe also somebody would cry out loud now and say, like, I was devastating when my grandfather died. I think this is why I'm saying, like, every person has his and her own experience. But for me, it's like it touches your roots. I mean, it's a person who has been there for my entire life, and I will not ever see this person again in my life. And those are like thoughts. I am actually also now quite surprised that I'm able to say this like very calmly, because last week when I was in Italy, and I was sitting like endlessly by the sea, and I had these thoughts, I was like crying out loud, you know, like, yeah. So yeah, I have to admit from my side that when I have friends who lost a parent or both parents, and I dealt with it, I will change the way I'm reacting when I will have people in my surrounding who are going to lose a father or a mother, because for me it was a whole different story. So I will pay much more attention now. And you know what I mean? It goes deeper, and I really think it doesn't matter what kind of relationship you had. Of course, I had a ambivalent relationship to my father, because he was my father. You know, I mean, we all have, or I guess most of us have, an ambivalent relationship to our parents because they are our parents. A friend of mine once cited, I don't know whom, it was like, if you think you are enlightened, you just go and spend an entire week with your parents, because those are the people who raised you. Those are the ones who will always trigger you. You know what I mean? In the good and in the bad, there's always also a challenge. You know, there's lots of love and there's lots of challenge. At least it was with me, it was like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you raised these these very important issues, and also the link that you sent me the other day to the podcast on the sort of psychoanalytical podcast. I'll also put a link to that into this podcast notes.
From Eckhart Tolle, you mean?
Yeah, because this you're exactly right. This concept of preparing people to be able to deal with the death and the loss of a loved one, especially, but preparing ourselves for our own passing, as it were. It's also extremely difficult, but that's a different topic, so we won't address that today. But dealing with the loss of somebody very close is very difficult for most people. We don't want to consider it. We don't want to think about it. It's something we push away, even though in the back of our minds we know it's coming. It's as though we have in our minds this thought that if we think about it or talk about it, we bring the event closer. And so it's almost like by not discussing it, we will push it away. Does that make some kind of sense?
Yeah. And I mean, I know this. I noticed this for myself. I mean, I started a couple of years ago to think about like, okay, how would I like to go, or what would I like to be done in cases of this and this and this and that. And I have that in my mind, and I have that on my little agenda, but I didn't take the time. And I'm exactly saying it like purposely, not I didn't have the time. No, I didn't take the time, because you have to take time for things, and I did not. And now, I mean, what we've been talking so far is like the emotional side, like when you lose a parent, but the organizational issues, it's hilarious. Like it's I really have to say, if I wouldn't have done the job I did in the last years, like with all the managerial skills, like organizational skills I had there, I don't know how I would have done that, me personally. Like, because then you are thrown in a situation where, like, okay, I don't even know the English name for. I didn't know that I didn't know the English name in Italian before as well. I had to learn a whole new terminology, like for example, urn, Urne. Or in English, how would you say like Bestattungsunternehmen?
Undertakers.
Excuse me, undertakers, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
they also call them funeral parlors. This would be the actual place where you go, but the job is undertaker. Yeah,
okay.
Which is strange, isn't it? Because as German, Unternehmen is a business.
Yeah, so the undertaker. So you have to. I mean, when somebody's found dead in his or her apartment, then you have the police coming. You have to talk with the attorney, like the office of the attorney generalist, to check if it's a natural death, or if somebody else was involved, like if it's murder. So like there are standard operational procedures, and then there are like also many different other standard operational procedures which you don't know if you haven't faced that, or if you haven't had the time or didn't take the time to think about it. And I didn't take the time before, because I was like simply not in my mind. And so talking to undertakers, deciding should somebody be burned, or like, do you want a funeral by urn or by what's that,
burial?
Burial,
we say,
like
cremation or
Sarg.
burial.
Cremation or burial. And in the case of my father, as he's Italian, and we have a family grave, let's say, in Italy, so it was clear that he had to be taken there. Like, how is the whole procedure? Like, what to let him wear at the, like, when you want to see him, like, because I had to see him. I went with my brother, and we took all the time we needed to sit there with him, like to say goodbye, like to understand. For me, the first 48 hours, I was like a mental zombie. I was running around for two days, like with not understanding what had happened, and seeing my father in the, what was the name, Sarg?
Oh, the funeral parlor,
In
or
the funeral,
or at the morgue.
No, not at the morgue, no,
At
like
the funeral parlor. Okay.
that me, like, for me personally, it helped me. It helped me to understand what had happened, and it helped me to have a chance to then still say goodbye, and but it was a horror for me, like standing in the sleeping room of my father, and like when the undertakers called and said like, okay, you could come in like 3 hours to say goodbye, but we need something to wear. So like, somebody's coming in half an hour, can you give this person whatever we should put on your father? And I was standing there. I was like all in tears. I was devastating. I was like talking out loud to him. I was like, I don't have a fucking clue what you would want to wear. I just don't know. But I was forced to take decisions. So I took decisions. I was running around and I was taking the things, and I was like, okay, I think he would have liked that, to wear that. For some other things I knew, yeah, like he liked to have hats, to wear hats, so I choose a hat and everything. So, like you have this, like at least with me, it was I took decisions on behalf of somebody else, in this case of my father, but I didn't know if this would be the right decisions for him. And for me, this was a very important experience, because, and when I was talking like in the last 3 weeks also to other friends and family members who had lost somebody dear, it's like every little thing you decide, we decide, I decide before I die makes it easier for the loved ones who stay behind. And it was the very first time in my life that I heard of people who have a hand baggage, like a suitcase the size of a hand luggage, prepared in their house with the things they want to wear when they are buried, or what they want to take with them. I never heard that before, Zach, because I never talked about it. It was not part of my reality, and I could imagine they are like, maybe also people are listening now and they're like, yeah, sure, I have that as well. That is no news to me, but for me, that was new, and every little thing, like if you do you have a testament? You say that in English?
Well, a will, yeah.
A will, yeah. If you have a last will, let people know that you have a last will. And like if like in the case of my father, he told us that he wanted to be like cremated. But it was then us that we decided that we would bring him to the family grave in Italy. We never had talked explicitly about that in the past. But as all the family members with the same family name are there, so like we decided to bring him there, and then you have all this. I know I'm jumping a bit in the topics, but then you sit there. I was sitting there with my mom in this undertaker's office, and then there was, okay, he should be burned, yeah. So you need to choose an urn, and they put 5 catalogs in front of us. Here you can choose. So I they're like, there's one surreal situation after the other. So I was like, thank you. So, and then we were sitting there looking through catalogs, choosing an urn for my dad. And I was really literally thinking that and saying it out loud when I was sitting there. It's like, hey, usually you, I don't know, choose furniture, yeah, or I don't know, shirts or whatever. Yeah, and so you are thrown all along on a continuously in new situations, and yeah, it's quite a challenge, I'd say.
Yeah,
and it's
please.
Now I just want to say, and then to come on the positive, maybe also to some positive aspects, is like, and if you have support in this phase, that's amazing. And another thing I learned is that, like in the past, when somebody died, I gave my condolences, and then I stepped back. I said, like, I will let people grieve and give them time and give them space. And because for sure everybody's going, at them, I will not do that again as of today, because every little thing I received in the last 3 weeks, they were so helpful. For example, there is this tradition of cooking food and bringing food to the house, like to the family, to the house where somebody died,
Yeah.
At least in Italy it's like that, but I think also in Germany, in some parts they do that. And in the past I was thinking, well, it's a nice, it's a warm gesture, but I was also thinking, like, that will not help, like bringing some food or whatever. And now I know, yeah, it helps so much, because sometimes even going to the groceries is you have the feeling like it's going up the Himalaya, because there are like so many new things coming on top of all the emotional issues you are having or you are dealing with. So I had friends of mine who were checking in with me on a daily base, even a line, I'm thinking of you, I'm sending you positive thoughts, or how are you today, or like this little signs, like a little heart or whatever, that gave me a smile. And it was so nice, because I didn't always have the time and not also the power, the strength to reach out to everybody. So yeah, I had close friends. I had I like call them soul sisters. I had my heart persons who they were there. And that was amazing to feel that.
Yeah. In many ways, it makes you really think about everyday life, as you said, that not being prepared, but also you didn't have the chance to say goodbye. The opportunity to communicate love and affection. And you mentioned right there that you appreciated so greatly the contacts of your friends. I mean, we can also take the time to communicate with people who are close to us when a tragedy hasn't befallen them. The ability to communicate sentiments instantaneously now is there, and perhaps we should preach to those around us to take that opportunity to ask, how are you, to live life almost as though it could be the last day. I think these are always sort of fruitful concepts for us to consider. I don't have a bag ready, Tanja, for when I go.
Me neither.
Yeah, whenever I play cards with my dad, there's a part of the game where you try to save the best cards for the end, and then when the trump card is played and your best card is taken with you, my dad he asks, where were you going to take it? Were you taking it with you? And
Yeah.
and this is a kind of concept that it comes from that old wisdom. When we pass, we take nothing with us.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether or not this bag idea is more a reflection of exactly the suffering that you had to go through in the aftermath of organizing things. I mean, this isn't an old aged tradition of having a bag. This is a more modern thing of, I don't want my loved ones to have to, go through all of my underwear and stuff when I'm, when I've passed. Then here's the bag. You just pick this up. You know where it is.
Yes,
Let's not
exactly.
think about it.
It makes it easier. It's exactly like when we go, we don't take anything, but you make it easier for those who stay. That is it. You don't do it for yourself. That's the interesting thing, is like everything we do, we prepare, we organize with regard to our own death. We are not doing that for us. We are doing that for those who are staying and who have to take care of us, the procedure, once we are gone. And that is something which struck me, because I always, like, I don't know, because I really didn't give a lot of thought to that. But I have the feeling, I thought like my death is like it's my thing, my personal thing, like, but what happens after one dies, yeah, is that is what really struck me. I mean, there is a lot of the whole entire system put in place, and laws and everything. Like when I took the urn of my father, I had to sign, like, I don't know how many papers, that I'm taking the responsibility, that I will go to exactly this town and this graveyard, that he will be buried there. And then I had to bring like stamped and signed papers back from Italy and show it here, like, and if this is not happening within 6 weeks, then I don't know what will happen, so there is like, there's an entire structure, which is also good because it helps, but it's also overwhelming. But there are also things which are not yet, not anymore. There is the tradition, like there are still some traditions, but you could also choose how you want it, and all these possibilities or options we could have, it makes it difficult, for those, like, if you are grieving over the death of somebody, and then you have to take all this decision, it's like, sometimes it's really unbearable. And it makes it easier. This bag, it makes it not like, we are not taking anything. I'm absolutely with you, but it makes it easier for those who stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you haven't even started to talk about in life insurance or death insurance, as it were. You haven't started to talk about the bank accounts and any kinds of assets that need to be transferred. I mean, I know people who have to deal with these things too, quite recently, and sometimes some banks, they really don't know what they're doing, and it's just one horror on top of the major horror that you've had to deal with, and you just scream into the abyss, basically. Why is this system like this? I want to mourn my loved one. I do not want to speak to bloody accountants all day long. Yeah, there could be ways of making things easier, I guess, but then, so many things that you bring in. Your use of the term sort of standard operating procedure. I mean, this is something that I'm sure most people probably have only experienced, much like myself, by reading. But I mean, you've lived it, so you kind of kick into gear. When you are trained within a certain situation, whether that is dealing with emergencies or dealing with sort of troubled waters, you kind of go into autopilot. I kind of have a feeling that's what you meant when you said you were walking around for 2 days like a zombie. It's like you were doing everything on autopilot. But there are lots of people who have no concept of what a standard operating procedure really is, what they have to do. And it's tough if you are not prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, specifically because you think it's all overwhelming, and you think you have to do and decide everything at once. And what I have learned in my life, and what I really was saying day in, day out within the last 3 weeks, I can only do one step after the other. And that is what made me breathe, one step after the other. And that is something I really learned in my job. Like, you can plan the hell out of everything, and sometimes it's really helpful. But in this case, I couldn't, like, I don't know how many people asking me questions, and how about this and how about that. My family in Italy was waiting, of course. When are you coming? How are we going to do this? And I was like, always, I don't know. I don't know. I have to see. I have to look at that tomorrow or the day after. For today, this and this are the steps I can take. This and this are the steps I'm going to take. And I cannot take more than that. It's simply not possible. And that helped me a lot. It was like my mantra. It was really like my mantra. It's like, I do one step after the other. And if it's baby steps, I do one step after the other. And that is what worked for me. Not to freak out, like, and even I was like more vulnerable and on emotional level, because when I had difficult situation during my work life, then I wasn't I was emotionally stable, and that is a big difference. But if you lose somebody, like your parent, that goes deep, and I think it goes so deep I don't even know yet. I mean, if we talk about recovery processes, healing processes, that is for me a lifelong situation,
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question. Or
it wasn't really a question.
no,
It was like
you're right. It was a comment. So
it was an invitation.
I took the invitation. Yeah.
I remember when a number of memories. So first of all, when the passing of my grandfather came when I was 18, and that was again a shock. And he had 5 daughters. So my mum has 4 sisters, and my grandmother was alive at the time, and the whole family came together, and we spent about, I think it was a week, where every day everybody would turn up at the home with food prepared, and my grandmum would sort of sit there in the middle of the chair, in the middle of the living room. And everybody would sort of buzz around her. And she had her daughters with her. And I can't imagine how much strength she must have taken from the presence of her kids. But she was extraordinary in her own way. And then when she passed, and I saw her in the state that you refer to, when you with your brother, you went to see your father in the funeral parlor. I remember also when my mum and her sisters, they went to meet to choose what she would wear. I believe, I wasn't there, but I believe they also took that as an opportunity to reminisce, to talk about what she liked, what was important for her. And I imagine this was quite a therapeutic experience for them. And I also remember on the day of her, when we went to see my grandmother lying there, but on the day of the funeral, she was so beautiful. She looked so much at peace, and it's interesting, isn't it, what we actually take from those final moments too. How did you and how did your family sort of approach that side of things?
When my father died, it made me mourn and grieve on the one hand side, and on the other hand side, it made me even more conscious about the fact that I am alive and which opportunity this gives to me every single day. So I had this immense wish of celebrating life, and I really mean celebrating. I do not mean partying life, like and to spend it with dear people, and also to talk about in a positive way, not like in a joyful, positive way about my father. So let me jump. When I go every year to Italy, and I visit the graves of my grandparents and everybody, and my uncle. And the first years when I lost my grandparents, every time I went there, I was in tears because I've lost them. And then there was a certain time when I was still having tears in my eyes, but out of gratitude. It changed. There was not the sadness anymore, like overwhelming sadness, but there was like a deep, deep gratitude that this person had been in my life, that this woman was my grandmother, this man was my grandfather, this man was my uncle, And this was, to me, such an interesting and such an important experience, which I took with me. Like I have it in me since years, like not only to mourn about the loss of whoever or whatever, but to be grateful that I had the chance to have this person in my life. And it is quite strange, but with my father, I had this like in parallel. So, for example, my mom is from the Balkans, and what they do there in some regions is after they have the funeral, the mass and the funeral ceremony, they all go together, like the close family and friends, they go and eat. They go in a restaurant and they eat. And on the head of the table, they leave the seed for the one who is dead. I have that when one of my aunties died, we did that, and I was there. So, and then they put a photograph of that person there, and there's everything there, and they pour water and wine and whatever whichever dish is put on the table, they put a bit of it in this on the plate of this person who is not there anymore. And this is not about this whole going to a restaurant and having food together. It's not about eating, but it is about celebrating that person, that this person was in all our lives. And that is not something that, and I really like this because it is a positive, it's a nice way of keeping somebody in your heart and in your mind, And of course, some tears were pouring down, but there were also laughter. That was, to me, that was a moment of life and death, like at the same time, and it was bearable. It was nice. And so I really wanted to do something like this for my father because he had one of his favorite restaurants down there. And it was also quite a discussion because to some people it might seem alienating, like, oh my God, we just buried your father and you want to go out in a restaurant, which one is doing to celebrate something positive. But to cut a long story short, we did it. And Zach, it was an amazing evening. It was such a nice evening. And everybody afterwards said so. Like for everybody, part of my mother and me, was the first time. And we have not been more than 10 people. But we talked a lot about my father, about his good parts, about his flaws, about 50 years ago, about now, about Germany, about Italy, about like everything, about music. Like it was, yeah, it was nice. And I don't know if it sounds strange to use this word, if it comes like nice, if it comes to funeral or funeral celebration, but it was yeah, I was so happy that we did that.
Yeah, I've in my wiser years, I think it's fair to say I've come to accept the fact that people would use different terms, and what may for me 20 years ago have been difficult to understand, now I'm far more in a position to empathize with the choice of words. So it's not that we should necessarily look at a dictionary translation or explanation of what the term is, but we have to try to appreciate the use of that term within the individual scenario it is being used to describe. So I understand what you mean. It's a part of a process, and that particular event was a means for you, I suppose, also to sort of introduce the importance of your mum's culture to the process, which let's not forget is a culture that your father married into.
Yeah.
So therefore, it was a part of his existence as well. And I think it's wonderful to be able to sort of reassure your mum that in the passing of her partner, her children remembered that the joining of cultures.
Yeah, very nicely put. Yeah.
And I mean, talking also about the decision for cremation. Do you sense that this is a process where the physical and the spiritual combine? Is this a means for the separation of these two? So the earthly vessel and the spirit. Did this play a role in your decision making, or was this perhaps something different?
I will answer, but in my way, a bit longer, I guess. I went to the undertaker's office to pick the urn of my father, and my mom and I, we choose an urn, but there's like the ashes. They come in a separate vessel, which is sealed, Mm-hmm. So, and then this sealed vessel, this goes into the urn, which you can see from the outside. So when I arrived at the undertaker's office, there was like the urn, this vessel, the sealed vessel was on the table, and then on another table there was the urn, and she was looking at me, and it was like, because I was like, okay, this is like my father's vessel, and she was like, yeah. And then he looked at me, so I'm sorry, I don't know, is this okay if that you see this? So she's a very professional one, and I could tell in the way she was treating me and behaving with me that she also had very different kinds of reaction before. And I was like observing myself during the entire time, and I didn't have any Berührungsängste. I don't know how you would say that in English.
Berührung is like movement, moving feelings.
It's like I didn't have any problem with the vessel and the urn of my father right in front of me in this office on that table, I was not screaming out loud, running around, or like I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, and I'm going to take this, and we need to pack this so that nothing happens to the urn. I don't want it to be damaged, not in a cold way, but in a pragmatic way. And I put the vessel, and I was referring to, like, I was putting the urn, and I was referring the urn to as my father. I was bringing him to my car, driving with him back here to Frankfurt, and then I brought him to Italy. And so I didn't have a problem with carrying this urn around with me. Actually, it was I put it, like, I bought some flowers and I arranged everything in my living room, like, so that it's a nice ambience for him. Or, for example, as for me is quite important, like we talked about that the sea, the ocean, has a very, very powerful, very deep meaning for myself. So when I arrived in Italy, the first thing I did was not going to my auntie's house. I went straight to the sea. And I left everything in the car. The only thing I took with me was the bag with the urn, because I didn't want to leave the urn behind. So there I was, sitting on the Corso, on the promenade, on a little wall, watching the sea, having the urn of my father next to me. And it didn't, like, it's not a natural situation, but it wasn't an alienating situation either. It was just the situation, and I realized that also afterwards. In this moment, I just did what was good for me, and it was sitting by the sea, and it didn't feel good to leave the urn behind, so I was taking it with me. And then later, when I brought it to my auntie's house and I told my family that, they were like, okay, interesting, and yes, I experienced, like, in southern Italy, it's not a tradition to use urns. And so when you have, for example, the mass, then you have the coffin in the middle of the church, So, and it was very difficult. I could see this. There was family members who were struggling to see the urn and saying, like, how can an entire person fit into that? Coming now back to your question, so, but I didn't see it like I didn't, I don't know. For me, it was now like that. Okay. So it didn't make me think that's like the rest, like the rest of, like, the ashes of a human being, and it didn't make me desperate, or I don't know. It's it was so out of the box for this region down there, like, that the priest, when he had his speech, was actually also talking about that. Like, that we don't always have the chance to have a coffin, and sometimes when people have an accident, and then you are torn apart into pieces, that still this person has the right to be buried in a nice and decent way, or in a traditional way, or however this person would have liked it, or the family would have liked it to be, and that it's not dependent on having an entire dead body in a coffin. You get me?
Yeah, no,
Is it?
I
Is
do.
it? No, just because I really can't tell if it's possible to follow me still, because I have the feeling that I'm going from right to left and up and down and
No,
changing topic and yeah.
no.
So yeah. So for me, it was more. At a certain point, I was a bit like, because they kept saying this a lot, like how can a entire human being like end up, you know, in an urn? And I was like, for me, I don't see it like this. I
Mm.
don't know. I like, and everybody is allowed, and everybody should see it the way he or she sees it. But I think if you ask 20 people, you get 20 different answers with regard to coffin or an urn or yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as you say, it's deeply personalized. Some people, I can envisage how in such a traditional area or village or town in Italy, in the south of Italy, for people, this would be extremely uncommon
Yeah,
as
uncommon.
a
That's the
means.
word. Yeah.
Yeah, as a means of saying goodbye to somebody on their last voyage. And so for them, it may have been a challenge to understand. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's also quite old as a tradition to cremate, warriors, if I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
correctly, and also sometimes on a floating platform too. And
Yes.
then and this is the way. This is the way it's always been, and it's just different.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I remember the little clip that you sent of you sitting by the sea, and when you communicated the loss in a bit more detail,
Mm.
and when I came to understand exactly what had transpired, I remember how you had said before how close you are to the sea, the sort of natural body of water that there is there, and how you've shared so many emotions, through it. It didn't come as a huge surprise thereafter to see that this would have been one of your stops on that path.
No, I was really, really like, when I arrived, I took a car at the airport. I went straight to the sea, and it was also the last thing I did. I said goodbye to everyone, and then I took the car, went to the sea. I said goodbye to the sea. I took some breaths. I sat there, and then I went back to the airport. And in between, I was like going sometimes 3 times a day from the city to the sea. It's like a 15 minutes drive, so it's not a big deal. And even if I was there for half an hour, and I went there like in the night, midnight, after we've been sitting together, and I remember in that week, last week was full moon, so I had the full moon above me, I had the sea in front of me. Yeah, it was pitch dark, a part of the moon. And it is, for me, I was able to charge myself, and that is, I believe, uh, no, it's not that I believe, I know it's another message I would like to convey today. It's really like, it's about you. Like when you lose somebody, then you have to do what's good for you. And I really didn't care if they're like my family knows me, so for them it was like, yeah, go to the sea, we know where you are, you just come back then and then, like, so it's about doing what's good for you in order to recover and to heal. And there, for me, if we talked before about SOPs, about standard operational procedures. When it comes to recovery and healing journeys, there are no standard operational procedures. That's all on the individual level. And for me, it was a lot. I went every morning, every single morning. I got up, I went to the sea for half an hour, for 10 minutes, for 15 minutes, for an hour. I don't know. Before I did anything else, that is where I went. That was my battery charger. Mostly I went also in the evening. And so what's the sea for me? That is, I don't know what for other people, and that is really what I like to, as I stressed before this, like, get organized for your departure, not for your own sake, but for the sake of the beloved ones you leave behind. It's like when you are mourning and grieving a loss, you have to take care of yourself in the way which is good for you. And for example, for me, it's also moving myself, like feeling life in my body, like continuing doing sports, going to the sauna, dance. And I am explicitly saying and mentioning this here because I know, like, there are very many traditions around mourning a loss, like not doing anything, all in black, and so on. And I have been dancing. I went to dance during the last 3 weeks because I needed to feel me, and because for me it's part of my recovery and a healing journey, and it does me so good. And if there are people around who say, like, her dad is dead and she's already going out dancing, nobody said that to me. Nobody. I had the other reactions, like people saying that they think it's the right way to do, and that some said that they are proud on the way I'm doing it. So they were carrying me, but I mean, those were my friends who were saying that. So there's a reason why they are my friends, maybe because we're like-minded people. And I'm sharing this here because I really think whatever does you good, do that, because it is your recovery, and it's not important what others think or believe or do. Everybody should have the right and the possibility and the opportunity to heal in the way he or she needs it, as long as nobody else gets hurt and you don't hurt yourself. I rather go out in the evening and have some nice dances and connection with life, with other human beings, than to sit in, I don't know, in my apartment and I don't know, killing a bottle of vodka. I don't know, it, like that. For me, that is more just, that is destructive. Yeah, for me it was quite important to also share this here. Yeah.
It's courageous, Tanya, because, as you say, there is a wealth of tradition behind you, where the expectation is that you will mourn. I mean, the Armenian tradition is that the family mourns they wear black for 40 days.
Yes.
And the widow would wear black for a year.
Yes.
I believe. This is a very old-fashioned tradition. And generally speaking, as you say, it would come as a shock to most traditionalists if any member of the family thereafter went dancing, because dance is connected to celebration and happiness. But there are other cultures where there is a dance of death, I believe, where, and this is to celebrate that final battle. I suppose there is a spiritual element to it, because thereafter, they've left the life on this planet, but that's not the end of it. There is another journey that has to be undertaken, and that dance helps them through that other journey too. So there are so many different ways of approaching death. And as you say, you have to do what's right for you. It's very subjective. I wouldn't want to judge. I find it, yeah, it's courageous. It's not easy for everybody to do that. You sometimes see in other people's eyes that they may be judging those actions, but you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. And I have to say also that I've been thinking also lately, if this had to happen, it's good that it happened now and not 5 or 10 years before, because 5 or 10 years before, I wouldn't have known what to do good to me, you know? Like I think I would have been 10 years ago for sure, 5 years ago, maybe also I would have been all about drama and destruction and maybe guilt and not daring to take care of myself because of not knowing yet exactly what I need, you know? And I am so grateful and I'm so thankful that I am at a stage of my life where I know what I need to be good. On a psychological level, on a physical level, on an emotional level, that I don't have problems to say I need support, I need somebody around me. For example, I'm one like on the normal under normal or under other circumstances, I go out also on my own if I want to go to dance. But this in the last 2-3 weeks when I never went alone. I always took somebody with me because I didn't know how I would react. I could have had a breakdown, bursting out in tears. I just didn't know. So I took care of myself while asking somebody, could you please accompany me? Be by my side, not babysit me, just enjoy your evening, but that I know if I need something, I need a shoulder, I need to go home, that there's somebody beside me I can turn to, and this person would help me and take care of me. I wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. I would have thought I need to do it all alone.
And that's that in itself is an important reminder. Nothing is so far gone with regards to an individual's existence that they would have to do things alone. Even if people have spent years isolating themselves, pushing friends and loved ones away, it's never impossible to re-establish connections when there is a need. I can imagine in your case this isn't necessarily the case. I know that you have some wonderful friends and people close by you. I mean, from our discussions, that's quite clear. It's important to reach out. It's important to have people there. Just sometimes even to not speak, just to listen, just to smile at, exchange a moment.
And that is actually the thing I am like this. Like maybe this is the third important message for me, or lesson learned. No, it's not a lesson learned. It's actually a message like that I'm so thankful and grateful for all the support I had, for every single dance which made me smile and made me feel alive, for all my friends and all my family who stood beside me, for all the little gestures, the small ones and the big ones. And I just wanted also to take this our talk, this podcast, to state this, because it really meant the world to me, and it made things bearable, more bearable.
Yeah, Tanja, what can I say? Thank you for sharing these deep thoughts, these feelings, this experience, this very personal experience, the messages that you have conveyed. I imagine that in our future talks we will also make reference to some of the feelings that perhaps even at this moment have not found expression. I'm sure there are many things inside you that still require thinking about, chewing over, and in the days and weeks to come, they will come out and they will emerge too. But I'm grateful that you took the time to speak with me, and through this, for you to be able to then say to all of those people who expressed their condolences, but also at the same time their love and respect for you, then it's wonderful that they can hear you state your appreciation for that.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for giving me the opportunity, Zach. Thanks.
Always, always, always. The Armenians say there's a word or a sentence that they say "Gyanka Manatzognerun," which I'll translate, and that means may life be for those who remain. And essentially that is what you have done. So one life has passed, but those that remain then have the responsibility of living their lives.
Yes.
And this is often very easy to forget, especially at the height of emotion of having lost somebody.
Yes.
So, yeah, I wish you to continue along the path of the courageous path that you have already undertaken. And I'm hopeful that you will continue to be an example in that way.
Very kind. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Tanja.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Two, and a mic. Two, and a mic. Two, and a mic. Two,